Doneil Henry's footballing career has been massively hindered due to injuries, which has once again led to him departing his latest club in Minnesota United, who have waived the ex-Canadian international defender, and he never truly hit the ground running at Minnesota, with Doneil Henry now departing another club at the age of only 30 the past couple of weeks. The Canadian centre-back has a massive decision to make now, and he truly needs to get this next decision right, as Doneil Henry's next move will determine the rest of his footballing career and the path that it'll take. But the big question now is, what is next for Doneil Henry? And for me, Doneil Henry really only has 3 options left on the table, and possibly even 2 to choose from now, with those 3 options now being finding a new club in the MLS and possibly a Canadian side, looking at a move abroad to even a smaller league, or even heading up north to the CPL and making a move just like we saw Magicar James making. All intriguing options for the 30-year-old Canadian center back, but first, we're going to take a look at the first option, I think, for Doneil Henry, and that would be staying in the MLS. And first and foremost, Doneil Henry staying in the MLS might be a logical move and a next step in his footballing career, but is it really the best choice? Staying in the MLS for Doneil Henry would be an interesting move at that, but an extremely difficult one to see which side he would be able to compete for a starting role at. If Doneil Henry was to stay in the MLS per se, he would more than likely have to join a club accepting a squad or depth player role, as it is extremely hard to see which club he would be able to jump in and command a starting role in immediately, which is of course a major drop off of the Canadian centre back who was just most recently last year and heading into the World Cup for Canada a regular starter or a player on the cusp of starting for the national team week in and week out. But joining a Canadian MLS side for Doneil Henry would more than likely be the best choice out of the lot, as Doneil Henry would bring such a great leadership presence to any young Canadian footballer and a great dressing room presence as well to any Canadian side, and he also has a lot of experience in the Canadian footballing landscape, which is just an obvious shout. But out of those 3 Canadian MLS sides, 2 out of the 3 would be perfect fits for Doneil Henry. And with those 2 sides being Toronto FC, of course a former club for Doneil Henry, and as well CF Montreal, a side he's never been at, but a side I think he would sit in seamlessly. And moving on to those sides, it is great to look at Toronto FC first, as looking at Toronto FC, Doneil Henry would make complete sense in my opinion, joining his old side for many reasons. Toronto FC currently struggling at the back with of course Matt Hedges, a key man and a focal point for Toronto FC, who has been on and off with injuries this season, which has seen Richie Laryea, a surprising man and a fullback for the Canadian international, and possibly going into his last game with Toronto FC coming up, now filling in at center back for Matt Hedges this season. But Doneil Henry, I think, would make complete sense stepping in, bringing in cover for the struggling Toronto FC at center back with injuries. They haven't been struggling sometimes to keep out clean sheets, but they have been doing a lot better this season defensively than they were last year. But Doneil Henry would be in a complete change for them, bringing in a lot of leadership. Yes, they're an older team, but Doneil Henry still brings in a lot of leadership and a lot of Canadian leadership, joining the likes of Jonathan Osorio, Mark Anthony Kaye, and Richie Laryea, but Richie Laryea is probably exiting. So Doneil Henry coming in, bringing in some center back cover would make complete sense, and being that leader for young Canadians such as Kobe Franklin, Kosi Thompson, and even Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy, just to name a few, would be a huge boost for Toronto FC as a leader as well as a dressing room presence. And also being a Brampton native is a huge factor, of course, as well. But looking at the CF Montreal possibility and that potential destination would be a very cool addition as well. As of right now, CF Montreal lacks a lot of leadership presence in the current squad, having only 3 players over the age of 30. CF Montreal has been known, of course, for being the likes of Atletico Bilbao, of Canadian football, truly, which has been bringing in such great young Canadians. We've seen Ismail Kone, Alistair Johnson, all leaving and going abroad, but right now you look at their squad and you see a lot of exciting young Canadians like Sean Rea, Jonathan Sirois, Jules Anthony Vilsant, and even Nathan Saliba, just to name a few of their young talents. And like I said, Doneil Henry's leadership and his presence throughout Canadian football is mind-blowing. It is huge, and all Canadian football fans know that, and all players within the Canadian footballing realm know what Doneil Henry has done in the world of football for Canada, and he has such a leadership and such a presence, and that is why John Herdman brought him along to the World Cup even though he wasn't playing. That speaks volumes of what Doneil Henry can do in a dressing room for a side, and I think having him in a dressing room with such young talent and Canadian talent especially would be a huge boost for TFC or CF Montreal. But currently looking at how CF Montreal play, they love to play in that 3 in the back system, and right now only having 5 center backs on their roster leaves them just with very little cover, and I think having Doneil Henry in there would be a sneaky little piece of business to really hit that Canadian quota, as well as add an additional leadership presence, Canadian leadership presence, as well as cover in the back if they run into injury trouble. But for me, Doneil Henry's time in the MLS as a MLS player seems to be up, sadly, as injuries have truly ruined a brilliant player's career and a brilliant guy's career. These are both fantastic options and possibilities for me, but the best place for Doneil Henry is in a new league. The second option is possibly the least likely for me, at least, which would be a transfer abroad. Some of you guys might think different. You guys might want to see him maybe go to Scandinavia, go back to South Korea, see him move out and go abroad once again. But for me, Doneil Henry shouldn't go abroad. Doneil Henry is certainly no stranger to playing abroad in a new league, as he's played multiple seasons in the Premier League, the Championship, as a younger footballer when he was the age of 21. But that, of course, was quickly hindered and ended as he was due to injuries, the likes of West Ham. But just a couple of years ago, Doneil Henry spent multiple seasons, as we all know, out in South Korea in 2020 and 2021, where he was playing with the Suwon Samsung Blue Wings, which for me arguably was his best time as a footballer. Most recently, we saw him playing some great ball, scoring some good goals. And that was when I saw him mostly on the national team and really playing at his best. But now looking at a transfer abroad for Doneil Henry really is the most likely option. I could see him going to Scotland, joining a smaller side there, doing what a lot of Canadian players have been doing as well, since they have that passport that can sneak them into a place like Scotland, as we've saw a lot of players in Canada have been looking to make moves. Victor Latorre, William Akio, Alistair Johnston, the list goes on. And I think Doneil Henry, if he was going to go abroad, Scotland is a great destination. But for me, truly moving abroad at this point in his career, at this age and time, really isn't the right fit for Doneil Henry. And that is why the most likely destination and the best option, in my opinion, is the Canadian Premier League. And this would be a huge option and a great boost for a young, thriving, exciting league that is just hitting its stride, as this makes the most sense by a mile for Doneil Henry, and this would resemble so much for me of that move that Magicar James made just this season to Forge FC. And it would mean so much to this league. Seeing a former, of course, ex-Canadian international defender, a player who is still on the cusp of that squad, making a move to a fresh, new, young, exciting league that is just finding its feet, would be huge and would speak volumes to this league. I know it's not a signing that would yell out to a lot of players to say, come join this league. It's not like a huge profile joining the league, but in terms of Canadian soccer, Doneil Henry is a big player joining the Canadian Premier League. It reminds me massively of Magicar James joining Forge FC in the CPL this past season, and it's a signing where at 30 years old, you could see Doneil Henry having a really good season, and Toronto FC going boom, CF Montreal going boom, we want to sign you, we want that Canadian quota, and they could do exactly that, just like we've seen with Doneil Zator and other players in the CPL, having a year or two of really great football, and then making a move to, whether it's abroad or whether it is Toronto FC like Lucas McNaughton did. There's always potential, and I think Doneil Henry could always revive his career in the CPL. I think CPL is the most obvious and brilliant move for Doneil Henry, and this would be a great place for Doneil Henry to land, whether it's for himself, whether it's for the Canadian footballing landscape, whether it's for the younger Canadian footballers, or just the CPL in general. This move would be massive and would speak volumes for Canadian soccer. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. We are back. I was in Vegas catching the semifinal of Canada-Panama, and that unbelievably crazy rivalry between Mexico and USMNT. But I am back home, the content grind is back, and I am fully ready to join the grind once again, guys. We are here, we are back. Twitter, YouTube, we're back on the channel. Bigger picture videos, we are here. I hope you guys are enjoying the bigger picture videos, the what's next. We're going to have quite a bit of those as the summer goes on. Perfect fits for players, everything like that. It's going to be on the channel. Let me know what you guys think down below about the what's next Doneil Henry video. I know he's a bit out of the Canadian landscape now, but I had to do it as he is such a landmark piece of this Canadian footballing landscape. Let me know what you guys think down below. Hit that sub button, drop a comment, and I'll see you guys for the next one. Peace.